Hey, hey, Fonzarelli here. No, this is John, and my brother Jake's here. Welcome to the Jake and John Show.
What's up, everybody?
World's greatest podcast of all time. Greatest. And today we're going to talk about emotional intelligence and a few other things. It's probably a bit of a continuation from the last podcast, but Jake actually found this book. I think it's called Emotional Intelligence 2.0. Is that correct?
That's it.
And I haven't downloaded it yet, but I did get the free summary on the Kindle, and then I went on Google and just did some research about it to see what it even is before I started reading the book. And I think it's really cool. And in the first few pages, there's a picture. I don't know if you want to call it an illustration. And it has the picture of the brain. And I should have written this down because I know I'm going to forget the names of it. But basically, it points out whenever you have, like a scent, whenever you touch something or sense something or something bad happens to you and it's just an emotional thing, it starts in your spinal cord and then it goes up into the middle of your brain where your emotions activate and then to the frontal lobe. And so it makes sense. Most people, without any training or restraint, they typically act in an emotional manner before they have time to weigh and consider what is actually happening. And so I think that that's the very basics of this book, is to be able to think about your emotions and how you want to respond to be emotionally intelligent in any situation so that you have the best outcome for yourself. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, I think that there's a little more to it so that's one angle, and then the other angle is being socially aware, I guess, or emotionally aware, is understanding or better understanding what other people are going through or what their emotional motivations may be. This book was actually recommended to me from somebody I know that I trust and respect, and I started reading it, and there was a paragraph I wish I'd written it down now, but it was in the first few pages that really struck a chord with me. And it said, it's talking about kind of the difference between IQ and EQ, which is EQ's the emotional intelligence. Is the difference is that your IQ does not equal your EQ, and they're separate entities there. And what it talks about is that a lot of people, and this is the part that struck chord with me, is they spend a lot of time trying to develop their intelligence to better themselves with education and things like that, but they spend almost no time trying to understand emotions and things like that. And that is probably 100% true of me. So that's another thing. They have this, I think they call it an appraisal. So basically when you buy the book, you can go to this website, put in a code, and take this kind of test. I guess it can to find your baseline of your so-called emotional intelligence. And I got on there and I tried to be as honest and objective as I could possibly be with the questions given. And I was a little surprised at just how low my scores were across the board. I was expecting to have some higher scores, maybe in some areas and lower in others, but they were all, I'm going to say, equally low. Maybe not to the point, like when I first read it, I thought, man, I may literally be a person who can't judge social cues at all. Like it really made me self-conscious for a minute. I was thinking, dude, I might just be making a total fool of myself at all times. And like, there may be people that don't want to talk to me or something, and I don't see that at all. And I'm just, one of those people that's fucking rattling on and all this. But, after I let that pass through the emotional part and flow up into the front, I thought, well, I don't think that's entirely true. I do think that I can judge some social cues, and hopefully, and if not, I'm very sorry. But, so I think the part that, as I'm reading more and I'm starting to understand it, is I think it's probably a little more generalized than that, in that I'm weak across several areas. And one of the major parts is understanding my own emotions. As I'm reading it and beginning to understand it, is understanding what are the reasons that I think certain things, or the reasons that I react certain ways. And I really sat down, like after just reading some of this initial part, and I started thinking about certain situations. And I'm like, why do I react in this way? And I guess my gut reaction at that was, I have no idea. Like, when I really thought about it, I was like, I've never thought that closely. Because a lot of times if there's like some kind of weird emotional reaction for me, I try to like brush it off and just deal with stuff. You know what I mean? But I never go back and look at root causes or try to get a better understanding of why I'm doing things. And in turn, I think that's also got me at a deficit on understanding other people. I do believe that's true. I mean, I was kind of talking in jest about missing all social cues, because I don't really think that's true. But I do think that I miss emotional cues. I think that I listen and I hear people, but sometimes I don't hear people. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know that sometimes I digest the gravity of what they're saying, or the meaning of what they're saying, because I'm not thinking about it in an emotional way. Sometimes I'm thinking about it very dryly, objectively. And I think that's kind of what's put me on the wrong side of this, is I'm trying to look at everything like a puzzle, or like a logic problem, and emotions aren't logic. That they're the counterpoint to logic. They're the part that makes you a human, right? And that's a place where I struggle. And so I've made a commitment to myself to read this book and to attempt to learn as much as possible and do some of the exercises to maybe to me, it's almost like opening a third eye, you know, because I think this is somewhere that I'm really honestly weak if I think about it. I've never taken the time to think about this. Like, I think about the way I look at situations, or the way that I judge a situation. So I see something and I always go to the logic first. And I don't think that the logic is necessarily wrong. It's just not the whole picture. It's just, I can see. So basically all I'm doing is I'm just determining, this is what happened. This is what happened. This is why, at a very basic level, but it's missing context of what led up to that. Do you understand what I'm saying? I feel like I'm not articulating this very well, but does that make sense?
It does. And when we were in the truck ride to go get these delicious beers and sandwiches, we were talking about this, and this is a general way to explain it, of course, but the simplest way to say it is man versus woman. And so obviously some men are very emotional and some women aren't, but we're just saying it's a general statement. And I guess it's comedic in a sense too, is that when we're faced with an obstacle, and this ties into the last episode a little bit, and we think it's ridiculous or stupid, even if it's rude to say that, we tend to, as you just said, not look outside the box as much as maybe we should for our own benefit and the person we're talking to. And we become a bit dismissive. And in a sense, you're not using intelligence by doing that, because you're just assuming in your own mind that, well, I know the answer, I have it all figured out, or they're just behaving erratically, so I'm just going to dismiss it or ignore them or just say a rude comment and walk away. But as we're discussing emotional, there's a minor debate that I've seen about emotional intelligence on how legitimate the science it is behind it. And a lot of people, respectable people, say that it is legitimate, and there are positives that you can take away from it, if nothing else. And I think the biggest positive is to use it to look outside the box. Even when you're in a situation where, okay, I'm trying to be logical and I think this is fucking stupid, I don't want to talk about this, is for both of us is to get that completely out of our mind, because it goes back to what I was talking about, that illustration. Where the emotion of irritation is getting to us, and even though we think that we're thinking logically, we may not be fully thinking logically with the frontal lobe, as it says in the book. What we're doing is allowing that emotion of irritation to take over, but we think we're being logical, but we're not. And so that's a flaw in a man's thinking. Like, you hear men are logical, women are emotional. But the truth is, men are also emotional, but they use that disguise of irritation and logic to cover that up. But you are being emotional because you're irritated, or you think the person's stupid. That's an emotion. That's not being a gray, being an alien, seeking out the answers and removing emotion. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I think what I'm trying to say is that I'm down with this emotional intelligence, and I think that for both of us, it is very beneficial. And I did not take the same test that you did, but I took another one, and my scores were about medium, but I don't know. There was only 15 questions, so there's only so much that you can get out of that. But as I was going through these simple questions, I looked at them differently than I would have, say, maybe even up to a month ago. Because I started to think, okay, I'm going to answer these honestly, as honestly as I possibly can.
Yeah.
And then I stopped and I was thinking, man, you know what? Sometimes I think that I am controlling my emotions and I am thinking and being logical and trying to be polite or to reduce a situation from a stressful situation down to I don't know, just something calm and fun. But the truth is that I do that much less often than I think I do. And so that in itself, just that, regardless if I agree with everything that I've learned about the science behind emotional intelligence, that in itself has taught me something. And again, this is the last time I'll do it, is I want to go back to that very simple illustration, is the impulse for emotion starting in the spinal cord or near the brainstem, and then coming up into the center of your brain where the emotional part is, and then going to the front of your brain. Just something about seeing that in a picture and just thinking about it for a while, I think it has really helped me a lot to slow down and to, instead of just saying I'm being objective, is now I'm challenged in a new way, in a way where I have to prove to myself that I'm actually being objective. I'm more harder on myself. And I think that in itself is a benefit. But
the image you're talking about makes a lot of sense when you think about it in context of animal instinct, because it makes all the sense in the world for you to react with emotion because it's quicker sometimes. Like, let's say that, and I'm not talking about if you're having a discussion with somebody, but let's say you're in danger or something like that. It makes sense to hit the more reactionary part of your brain and your thinking, your psyche first, rather than go straight to your logic, because you need to be able to react quickly. And sometimes that means not developing a full plan. That means you need to just do it now. So that was one of the things I kind of took from that picture. And what I want to do with this is, I was looking on when I picked up this book, because I'd heard the term, but I'd never really paid much attention to it. We've had classes at work and all kinds of stuff on this, you know. I mean, it's a fairly big deal. But so I heard about the book. Like I said, somebody I really trust and respect, and I went to Amazon to go pick this thing up, and it's got a shitload of reviews. It's 4.5, 5-star reviews with thousands and thousands and thousands of people. So I was like, man, there's something to this, and I've never even really paid any attention to it. So I'm still going through the book. So the way it kind of works is, after you take the assessment, it kind of breaks things down to you. And what the hell, I'll just tell people here. So on my assessment, I can't remember the exact numbers, but they're somewhere, probably average around the mid 50s on each one. So if you've taken the assessment, you'll know what I'm talking about. And then it comes out with also some recommendations on areas that you should focus on, because I guess the book has, and I've yet to get fully into this yet, but it has several different chapters and exercises for specific topics. So it gives you some ideas on what areas are probably most critical to start immediately, So what they suggest is kind of going through this thing, doing some of these exercises, or not only doing exercises, but reading about it, and just, because I think when you start thinking about it, you're already improving, right? Because, the second you start actually thinking about things in that way, you've already made a huge leap forward. So you start doing that, and then they encourage you to take the assessment again later and kind of see where you stand then, and then kind of reevaluate your goals and see if there's other areas that you need to work on. So it's pretty cool, man. I hope you end up getting the book and doing it. I'd love to see kind of like how our scores match up and kind of compare notes on it, because it's an interesting topic, man. It's totally new to me, and I'm really looking forward to getting into it. I haven't been this excited about a book in a while.
Yeah, it sounds really cool, and I should have downloaded it when we first started talking about it, but I will for sure, because whether we're on mic or not, it's something that's very exciting to talk about, because the way that it's presented is new to me. But I don't want to go too much off on that subject, because I haven't even read the book yet.
Well, I figure, maybe we can have like a follow-up episode where we'll talk about it a little more after we have actually experienced some of the actual book and the exercises program, So
yeah, for sure. But one thing we wanted to talk about too, and we talked about this a little bit before we actually started doing the podcast, was the issue of being a workaholic. And obviously it has endless roads that come out of that on why you do it and what that actually means. And we both have two different issues with this in a sense. Some people may not consider them issues, but I think that both of us do. And for me, work gives me a sense, and again, we're going to go kind of down two different roads the way that we're going to talk about this. But for me, if I ever have a chance to work overtime or to earn a bonus of some type, I always do it. And the reason that I do that is because I don't want society to view me as a failure. And so I feel like I have to take every possible opportunity that is presented to me to make money and to be successful, or I start to get down on myself and I start to feel inadequate and small and stupid. And so the logical side in me tells me you're being a fool. Of course you should work hard and help your company out and have a good life, but at the same time, if it's not always necessary, I shouldn't be cheating myself out of free time with friends and family, or just to enjoy life in general. I love to read. I like to watch movies. And sometimes on the weekends, I cut my time short with that because I always volunteer for work, because I have to have this sense of responsibility and stability in my life. Even if I plan on getting totally shit-faced on a Sunday or Saturday, and the other 6 days I work my ass off, because, getting shit-faced isn't really a responsible thing to do, but it's almost like I justify it by, okay, I'll just work more, I'll do this. For those who don't know, I wrote a book a while back and published it, and so one of the things that I'll do occasionally is to write, and now that we have this podcast, to make up for what I feel like might be my shortcomings or my fears, is I'll go into hyper mode, and I'll stay up for like 20 hours or 24 hours, and I'll put everything into the writing or the podcast research, or just whatever, anything that I can do to improve myself. But I need to find balance in that if I'm going to have a truly happy and successful life, because sometimes it stresses me out and I'm being irrational. For myself, I like to think that I'm a very rational person, or that I'm above average, but I think it's my ego that tells me that, and it's not necessarily the real truth. I might just actually be a mess, and I put all these things in this web, and I take what I want and push away what I don't want, but I'm not doing it in the best way possible for the happiest and most successful life. So anyway, we were discussing that, and you and I have some similarities, but we also have different roads in that aspect. And so for you, the workaholic sense and the sense of overall responsibility is, it's almost, in a sense, if it's become a part of your nature, or you just feel it's absolutely necessary. So I want to hear your take on what that is to you.
So the reasons I think that this exists is I have a genuine passion for what I do, first of all, which I think is a good thing. And I also have probably a childhood chip on my shoulder with a need to succeed. I fucked around a lot when I was a kid in school, fucked off, dropped out of school, fortunately I have the presence of mind to go get a GED and stuff, but I remember being told several times, you're not going to be shit, basically. I mean, from teachers in school and all this, you're not going to fucking make it. It's kind of the gist of it. I mean, sometimes it was almost that course. And, I remember that something clicked at some point. I mean, probably when I was 17, 18 or something, I'd already dropped out of school, but something clicked, and I'm like, that's not my fucking future. I'm not going down that road. I'm going to fix this. So went ahead and, got my GED. I was fortunate enough to be able to get, my first computer job in a little shop. But from there, like, that shit took wings, man. Like, I've dedicated a large portion of my life to working on my craft, and fortunately that's taken me a long way. I've been very, very fortunate, and I'm somewhat of I would say almost an overachiever in that area. I don't mean this in any kind of weird, conceited way, but like, I have a lot more in the ways of like certifications and stuff than most of my colleagues do. It's not because I'm better at anything. It's because I have this like feeling of needing to be dedicated to my craft and being the best I can be at it. Now, something that, and I've noticed this now for a couple of years, is like, I still really, really enjoy doing it, but I'm starting to get tired. You know what I mean? Like, I've put so much energy into this that I've kind of been missing things. I've really noticed it lately. And what's happening is spending so much time with like work shit and like studying, trying to get better and better, that I'm missing out on life, man. I'm just not, it's like I'm forgetting how to have fun. I'm forgetting how to have a good time. I feel like this, and all this pressure is pressure I put on myself. There is no one out there being like, Jake, you need to do better. You need to spend more time doing this. I mean, if anything, people are, and maybe this is something that maybe I've enjoyed or something, is people are often shocked at what I'm trying to do or accomplish and in what periods of time. But, you know, it's things I take as like personal challenges, and I don't know why I do it, man. It's fucking weird. But at any rate, it's definitely having an impact on my quality of life and the amount of fun I'm having. So I'm having a fair bit of success, which is fantastic, but it's coming at the cost of just about everything else. And I'm done with that. Like, I don't know how else to say that. I have to get that back. And in fact, over the past few weeks, I've really been slowing that down, because I've been studying, and I know, I was working on trying to teach a class and doing all this, and it's just this huge time commitment, man. And it's not giving me what I want. It's actually killing what I want, to be honest. Like, if I really step back and look at it, it's taking away what I want. Like, I want to better interpersonal relationships with people and all this. I don't want everything to be focused around this work. And I guess that's what I'm trying to do, is kind of take away from this chip on my shoulder and kind of just get back into the normal groove of life. And other things that I've noticed about myself when I'm thinking about this is, like, I have this weird sense of, and I think it's a good thing sometimes, but this sense that I need to be responsible all the time. And sometimes that I feel like I need to be responsible for other people and other people's actions and stuff. And it's fucking exhausting, to be honest, because, sometimes I'll not do things so someone else can do them. You know what I mean? And I think it's good. I think it's a good gesture on my part, but I think it's coming to a fault. It's getting to a point where it's actually stealing my joy. And I think I'm about done with that, man. And I think it's almost time to start being like a little bit selfish with that. I hate to use that word, but I almost feel like that's what it is. It's like I feel like I need to step back and like reclaim my life and like figure out who I am again, and get rid of whatever it is that's pushing me into this just like endless drivel of work. I know I said on the last episode, I don't want to die and be known as the guy that, like, was sheltered off and the guy that was working all the time, and like, oh yeah, that guy worked hard, or whatever. Like, man, I'm ready to change that course before it's too late. You know what I mean?
I do, man. And that shit, it's crazy because, and we're not trying to suck our own dicks here and beef ourselves up that we're the smartest guys or the hardest workers on earth. But I think it's obvious at this point, it's a direct, what's the word I'm looking for? The reason that we behave this way is because of a lot of the negativity that we receive from the outside world during our growth period. And so in a sense, we're making up for that. And we also both have an intense fear of failure, not in the sense that we won't try new things or work on something challenging, but the fear of failing at life. And I know most people probably have this to some degree, but I think that you and I share this, that we have it very strongly. We don't, the idea of just everything closing down on us, losing our job, and losing the things that we love in life, and losing a sense of, not repetition, but routine, and losing that routine, it drives us both it puts us both in overdrive to the point where we're overachieving and overworking ourselves to make up for it. But I think that we both tend to do it too much. And again, I want to be very clear that we're not bragging on ourselves, because I know that in popular culture right now, being on the grind and work 24/7 is very popular type of thing. But that's
and I would like to. I mean, I want to say I don't think that this is a good thing. Not at all.
Exactly.
This has become a major problem. I mean, so to speak, is having a drive so strong that it's taking away from other aspects of life. And this. I hate even talking like this, because it almost sounds like weird, conceited in some weird way, but that's not what it is, man. This is a problem. This is like a mental issue of feeling this need to like do things so rigorously that all other things go by the wayside.
And I think I can give a good example of what we're talking about, and this is more specifically in my case, but if you break it down, it's kind of the same thing. And I've had a lot of dry spells in the dating world in my life where I've gone up to a few years without dating at all. And I've set myself up for failure because in my own mind, I have to have a certain criteria. So I have to have 7% body fat. I have to have all brand new clothes, expensive designer shit. My car has to be waxed and cleaned. It has to be brand new. And like all my furniture in my house has to be like out of a fucking magazine. And I put all this pressure on myself that's so unrealistic and childish that you become a repellent to other people because they can sense it on you. Like when your hair is a little too perfect and you can see it on somebody. And that's something I struggled with for a long time, but it's the same thing when you apply it to anything else, is that you have this deep insecurity inside of you. And I think that's really what we're talking about here. That's what it is. It's an insecurity that we're not properly addressing. And so in our minds, the best way to handle that is to overwork and so that we can be undeniable. So no one can judge us, judge us unjustly. Because we feel like if I'm working hard and I'm healthy and taking care of myself and I'm taking care of my responsibilities beyond what any average person would do, no one can say a thing to me like they used to. No one can say that I'm going to grow up to be a loser or that I'm white trash. I'm not smart. I'm not good enough. I'm never going to be a good athlete. No one can say anything if I'm going the extra mile in every single activity in my life. But again, when you do that, especially for long periods of time, months and months, and then eventually turns into years and years, you've developed a whole new set of problems, and you haven't focused on that problem so that when you finally realize it, in a sense, you've kind of fucked yourself. It's not that you can't fuck your way out of it, but because you can, but now you have to figure all that shit out in your head, how you're going to deal with this, because you've developed habits in that time frame. And emotional habits, physical habits, and you have to start to control those impulses. Like, for me, if my arm didn't get fucked up, I guess I'll explain to the audience a little bit of what happened. Is I had a cyst on my right humerus, and it was potentially cancerous. Fortunately, it was not, and I had to get surgery where they removed a lot of the bone. And 2 weeks later, I broke my arm in half completely, the bone, because I put too much pressure on it. And I had a long road to recovery. It's been 7 months since I broke it, and I just got the clear to be able to start slowly exercising again. And that's one of the best things that happened to me. It was a very painful and expensive experience, but it was a good thing for me because it got me out of that mind state that I must look a certain way or feel a certain way all the time, because it becomes a sickness inside yourself. And over time, as I got older, I learned to not talk about it, to not talk about the bodybuilding and diet stuff, because it can come off as very obnoxious, unless someone's asking you for advice.
Of course. They're into it, yeah.
But it's not something that I would ever talk about. I would just do it. But in my head, in my own mind, my own little world that I developed, it was a sickness, and I was missing out on so much in life. I would only eat certain foods at certain times. I wouldn't do this and this. And it was just it's just too much. It's unbearable. And we talked about that before, where we kind of don't understand the bodybuilding world because your entire life revolves around that thing. Look, if you're Mr. Olympia and you're making $5-10 million a year, I get it, right? But for the average person like me who's not making $10 million a year, it goes far beyond just being healthy. There's an emotional issue going on there that must be addressed.
I think that you and I have, and we've talked about this a little bit, we both have this, I don't know if it's an addictive person, maybe that's what it is, an addictive personality, where we find something and then we just drive into that as far as you can go. Like, there's very few things I get into where I just kind of give it a once over. I mean, if it's something that I feel like I truly have interest in, usually I kind of take that as far as I can, and I try to learn as much as I can about that particular subject. And that trait, I think, is what leads to these crazy excursions into, like you're talking about, like with working out or with working or just whatever it is. And what I want to do is figure out what that balance is, because it's so fucking stressful at the same time, and it's all self-induced stress. Like, I was just thinking about this a minute ago, is the people that I feel like I'm doing these things for don't give a fuck about it. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like if I feel like I'm trying to do this to help someone, they're not asking me to do that. I'm doing that on my own accord. And not only that, I think it's a nice thing maybe on my part, but I put so much pressure on myself that it almost causes anxiety. It's like, I feel like I have to do this thing. And when I sit back and think about it right now, I'm like, I don't even know why I need to do that or why I think I need to do that. It's silly. And when no one's asking you to do something and you're going full bore on it, what is the point? Well, I mean, I'm not gaining anything from it for sure. And the person or people I think I'm helping aren't gaining anything from it and probably don't even know why or have any concept of why I'm doing it. Then I have to sit back and think, what the fuck am I doing? You know what I mean? Is that what you're talking about here?
It is, and it falls back to Satanism again, is doing things. I'm obviously kidding to a certain degree. We want to keep it somewhat serious, but it does make sense. And you and I share a similarity with our anxiety. We have a bit of a difference. I think that all people experience anxiety on different levels and in different situations, of course. But one that we both share is we've had a lot of stomach problems in our past, and whether it's defecation or shitting for those who are less academic, or thinking that you're going to vomit or things along those lines. But mine got so bad when I think it was my second year in the military, because all the stress going on, I was like over 1,000 miles away from home, and the career field that I had, there's a lot of very unrealistic expectations put on you immediately. And it didn't help my stomach troubles. I'd always had them since I was, as far as I can remember, since I was probably about 7 or 8 years old. And it was triggered by stress. And I don't even like using the word triggered, because you see that, somebody
the way it's used now. Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, but fuck you, we're taking that word back, triggered. And so, anyway, it got to a point in the military where I would feel like it wasn't that I just felt it was actually happening. I would get stomach cramps so bad that I would have to bend over and like sit in a chair and lean over, because if I tried to stand up, the pain is so unbearable that I can't even explain it. And so I thought that I might have Crohn's disease, but I don't. And I found that out because I went to the doctor and I actually got a colonoscopy done. And most people probably have a good idea what that is. They stick a robot cock up your ass that's got a camera on it, and they look at your colon. And so my colon was good, but he said I have the most spastic colon that he's ever seen. And so obviously part of that is from genetics, some of it's from diet, and then some of it is from the way that I choose to handle stress, or the way that my body just genetically does it. I'm not going to try to get all doctory here. I don't know all the chemical imbalances and stress and hormones, because if you break it down to the very finest level, it's a very complex issue. But so for me, one of the ways to deal with that was to get the mentality that I don't give a fuck unless it's life or death, basically. And then that didn't work very long. And so I actually ended up going to anger management and cognitive therapy. And then on top of that, I had a psychiatrist. And this is all while I was in the military, because I would get so stressed out and internalize that eventually I would just explode. It's a very common thing. It's if you have all of those three things, it's going to happen. You're going to explode eventually, right? And I never did anything crazy or hurt anyone or anything like that. I just would be like, fuck you. Kick a trash can and say, fuck you, I'm not doing it, that kind of thing. And so, but I learned in there, again, it ties back to what we were talking about earlier, is assessing the situation and being honest with yourself. But I don't want to, I feel like I'm talking myself in circles and I'm covering the same thing over and over. But I want to share an experience about the fuck it attitude to overcome something. And so again, I said I've always had stomach problems, and it's not always necessarily having to take a shit or go to the bathroom, but sometimes it is, or I think it is, and then I do it and I still don't feel right. But anyway, a lot of it is tied to, and I know people who have irritable bowel syndrome can probably relate to this. And I've been in situations where I felt like maybe I was trapped, whether I'm in a stadium somewhere or if I was in the military and I was trapped in a formation listening to a boring speech for an hour, or things like that. And so one day in the military, we were doing a training exercise, and it wasn't something that was overly stressful, but it was where you have to lay inside of this box on concrete, and the box is made out of tape, and you're pretending it's a bunker. You're doing an exercise for chemical warfare. It was one of those. I don't know. I did it a bunch of times, but it was probably 90-something degrees outside. It was 5 p.m., hot as shit. We're on concrete. We're in... it's called, I think it's, if I remember right, it's called MOP gear. It's full chemical gear, and you have the fucking mask on and all that shit. And it's really, really fucking hot. It's where when you're laying on your belly for about 15 minutes, you start to feel that pool of sweat form around your testicles, and you can just feel it sloshing around, and it gets larger and larger. And you can only drink water so often. It's safe. You can drink water enough to where you're not going to have a fucking heat stroke and die and dehydrate. But something about being trapped in that situation, I was already stressed out. I was like, man, I gotta fucking take a shit. And this could have had something to do with my diet at the time. I was protein. And I was thinking to myself, I can't get out of this box, though. If I get out of this box, I'm going to be in deep fucking shit. And so as I sat there, I was like, you know what? I keep saying to everybody, fuck it. I don't give a fuck. Fuck it. So in this moment, I don't give a fuck. And so I let a little shit out. Little bit of shit out right there in that box, surrounded by my colleagues. Fortunately, that we had all the gear on, so there was no smell. But the thing is that didn't release the tension at all. It made me more tense because I had shit on my butt and I couldn't go anywhere. And on top of that, I was afraid that people might be able to smell it. They couldn't because of the amount of gear I had on. And so I've been in many situations like that with my stomach where I've had stomach problems. And this happened to me also about a year ago, and I was driving out to see one of our family members that lives about an hour and a half away, and there's certain stretches of highway on the way where there's nowhere to go to the restroom. I didn't bring any toilet paper or wet naps or sanitizers or anything like that, and I found myself in a situation. One of my other brothers, my younger brother, both of our younger brother obviously, was in the vehicle with us, and I was like, man, I gotta fucking take a shit right now. And he was like, and I was driving. He was like, dude, you're good, man. You can hold it. And I was like, no, dude, I'm telling you, I got to fucking shit now. And he was like, dude, just pull over. I was like, dude, we have no toilet paper. There's no fucking magazines in here. Nothing to wipe my ass with. We have to stop somewhere. And he was like, man, I got you covered. You can use my shirt, bro. My little brother is cool as fuck. Maybe we'll probably have him on here eventually. And I was like, dude, I don't want to use your shirt, man. I need to be in the fucking bathroom. And this is one of those things I'm not thinking logically. This is 100% emotion because I do not want to shit in my fucking pants because it's one of those days. I used to drink a lot more than I do now, and I knew it was coming. It wasn't just a little turd or a little shit water. It was fucking a gallon of shit at least. And so I'm panicking, and I've been very open about my atheist views and agnostic views on this podcast. And so about 10 minutes goes by, and I have my legs crossed. Remember, I'm driving and clenched together so fucking tight that I don't even know how I'm maintaining the proper speed because my foot's on the gas pedal. And if we would have had to brake suddenly, it's possible we could have crashed because if I would have moved my leg an inch, I would have shit everywhere. And so anyway, time goes on. We keep going, and we see a sign for an Academy sports store. I was like, oh my fucking God. So just seeing that sign brought a little bit of relief. And so we pull off the exit, and then we drive over to this bridge that goes over the freeway. And then I see this fucking line of like 30 or 40 cars going into the parking lot, and there's this stop sign, and they're taking for fucking ever. And then the panic sets in 1,000 times worse than it was when we were actually moving. Because at least at that point we had a bit of, we were alone in a sense. We could pull over, and if I had to shit, I could do it and use my brother's shirt. But now I'm trapped. So I either have to shit in my pants or I have to run out into this field next to this academy out in the middle of the country and shit, and everybody's going to see me. And so, as I said, I'm an atheist and all that, but in my mind, I'm thinking, God, please don't let me shit in my pants. And then I'm arguing with myself, like, stop being a bitch, God's not real. And I'm having this emotional warfare and spiritual warfare in my brain while I'm clenching my cheeks and like little farts are slipping out, like, burp, 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 like that type of thing. And so we finally make it to the front door, and I'm having a full-blown panic attack, and my little brother is losing his shit, laughing his fucking ass off, and I just slam on the fucking brakes. We skid in front of the store, and I fucking slam it and park. I'm like, oh God, I can't hold it. I'm gonna fucking shit. And fucking, I thought I was gonna shit my pants, but it was just this massive, like, fucking 30-second fart. My little brother's fucking losing his mind, dying laughing. And so I run out of the fucking car. I'm praising the universe, thanking the universe that I didn't shit in my pants. I fucking haul ass to the back of the store. The people who work there ask me, oh, hey, how you doing, sir? Can I help you? I'm like, oh, fuck you. Where's the bathroom? I'm being rude as shit. They point me to the bathroom. I get back there, unleash hell the second my fucking underwear hits the floor. I'm back there for a good 20 minutes. Then I feel relieved. I come back out. My little brother's still dying laughing. And then the rest of the drive, he was making fun of me. And I appreciate that about him, that he was, because I deserved it, because it was funny. And I shouldn't have been drinking and eating bullshit food the night before, knowing we had that long drive. But the point of this story is that I wasn't using emotional intelligence. Now, don't get me wrong. Because I made poor decisions the night before with the alcohol and the bad food, obviously that can create an unfavorable situation the next day with your stomach, with your, gastrometry. How do you say that? Gastronomy? I don't know.
Let's go with that.
Yeah, your gastronomics. But I wasn't using emotional intelligence, because 50% of that was my poor decision making as far as the night before, my preparation for that drive. But the other half was I was letting my fear and my emotions get the best of me before I let it get to my frontal lobe, so I could bounce it around and consider it and use my logic and calm myself down. Because the reality of the situation is I let myself get into a panic. My fear of embarrassment, of shitting my pants in front of my little brother, or having to pull over on the side of the road, or just so that everybody would probably find out about it and I would look like an irresponsible adult. And all of that fear and anxiety came up, and it ramped it up so much that that I had to shit. In my mind, I forced myself. My adrenaline was pumping. My heart rate was up. And so, while it's obviously a very comical way to describe it, it goes back to everything that we've been talking about now, and even in the last episode and some of the others. It's about emotional control. And I guess that's the best way to put it, is emotional control, because that's really what it is taking the time to understand what you're doing and what you're going through, and to get rid of all of the things that aren't true, but you're in your mind, you're making them up, of what's going to happen or what might happen. And of course, that's what forms a lot of anxiety, is what might happen if I don't do this or I do this. And so I know that you also have had some issues with this in the past, and somewhere along there I was going to ask you about it, but I got carried away a little bit on my tirade there. But I want you to also share your experiences with anxiety and also your stomach issues.
Well, I think we talked about it a little bit last time. I've had anxiety issues for a long time, and the more we talk about all of this, it's not shocking why. It's almost been a light bulb moment in these past two episodes and us talking through this as to why that happens. It's because of the immense amount of pressure that I know this is speaking for myself. It's the immense amount of pressure that I put on myself to try to control a situation and for things to go a certain way when I actually have zero control or say or about how that goes down. I mean, there's only so much you can do to control what's happening. I mean, and the rest is kind of out of your hands. So yeah, that's weird. The light bulb just kind of went off for me a little bit there. But yeah, I've had all kinds of strange stuff. I've had stomach issues. I can tell a quick story. A long time ago, I was still going to college, I think, at the time. And I had all kinds of stuff going on, man. I was working crazy hours. I was doing what I do, man. I was working tons of hours. I was taking, full-time college and all this, just wearing myself fucking ragged is what's happening. And after that, I'd picked up skateboarding at the time, actually. And me and a friend of mine, we'd go out and skate, like after when I would get off work or whatever, and we'd hang out. And then, one day I recall he and I decided we were gonna go to Fry's Electronics and go fuck around. And we got in my car, started driving up there. Everything was 100% normal, and all of a sudden, I felt a twinge in my head. And when I say that, I mean like it was like on the like on my scalp. I felt this twinge, and for whatever reason, man, my brain went instantly to, you're having a stroke, which is, if you think about how insane this is, I was 22 years old or however old I was. I was young, right? And I was like, this is insane. But so this is how out of hand it got, though, because I was so like on edge and so like anxious. It went from me kind of having that thought in my head to a point where I had hyperventilated myself into just complete, what's the word I'm looking for? It was like tingles. So you know how it feels like when your foot goes to sleep and it's tingling when it kind of starts coming back and you like can't step it on it, you know? Well, that's how my entire body felt. And later I figured out this was from hyperventilating. I was breathing so quickly and I had so much oxygen in my blood that it was causing my entire body to tingle. So this basically one thing led to another, because each time one of these new anxiety symptoms would come on, it was getting worse and worse in my brain. I'm like, so as I get these tingles, I stop being able to move my hands. My hands start locking up like in this strange, like when people do the double jointed finger thing, like my hands locked up like this. And I was like, fuck, man, I had a stroke. Like I'm losing control of my body, So I was still driving at this point. So I kind of got pulled over or whatever. And I told my friend, I was like, you have to fucking drive. Take me to the hospital, And I went so he took me to the hospital and we got there. And so once I got in the building, I started to calm down and all this shit went away. Okay. Now at this point I was still kind of freaked out because I'd never had, this was like a full blown panic attack. Like it is to date the worst one I've ever had, like bar none. And, so we get in the hospital and they ended up running a bunch of tests and all this. And, the only thing that came out of it that was my potassium was low. And the reason for that, they believed, was because I had hyperventilated and I was so tense and working my muscles, basically had eaten up all the potassium, which makes perfect sense. But there's a pretty extreme case, right? Like, I ended up going to the hospital, like thinking I was having a stroke. Like I didn't think I was having a heart attack. Like I worked myself. This tells you how powerful the mind is, to a point where I couldn't move my hands. My whole body was tingling. And this all started with like a little twinge in my scalp that was no doubt had to do from just how hard I was being on myself. And, I wasn't getting enough sleep. In fact, I was going to the gym at the time. I was going to school. I was working like a fucking animal. And I was probably just tense or whatever. So it was a little muscle twinge or something. But yeah, that's where it took me. And it's crazy when I think about this. It's all starting to become pretty clear, is this amount of pressure that I put on myself in these situations are clearly the cause. And I'm really happy to know this right now, because this is going to help me to make decisions going forward as far as how much pressure I put on myself. Because I feel like I might be able to solve a lot of things that are going on by removing some of that and by just letting loose and probably living how a normal human would to begin with.
I want to, I'm not to interrupt you, but I want to tell a story real quick. And the reason I want to tell this is because I feel like, at least right now, you and I are both being very honest about our anxiety and the causes, and we're figuring out why we had it. And we've talked about it before, but I want to tell a story about something that I actually witnessed. And this has to do with covering up insecurities or fear with confidence so convincingly that the other people around you genuinely believe you. And so this happened in 2004. And this was, I'd been waiting to get in the military for a year and a half. And one of the final processes is you go to MEPS for the last time, military something processing. I forget what it means, but you go there and you get to meet all the people who are going to ride on the bus with you to basic training. And so my mindset at that time is, I'm just here to be successful and to say yes, sir, and to learn how to be an adult and to be successful in the world. I'm not trying to show off for anybody. I just want to be successful. And so a lot of the people there were like that. And then you have some strange characters there. But there was one guy who stuck out in particular. And it was this black dude. He was probably about 6'2", about 200 pounds. He was very muscular and lean. And genuinely speaking, he was a nice guy. But he was very confident. It was apparent right from the start, is because there was, 10 or 15 of us there initially in the room. We were all just talking about our plans for the future and basic training. And he's talking shit. They better not get my face. I'll knock him the fuck out. I'm Golden Gloves boxer, Houston champion, all this shit, And And I'm just listening to him. I don't care. Whatever, that's your thing, man. But he keeps talking about it, and some of the liaisons there, they come in, they're master sergeants, and they're telling us what to expect on the bus once we actually get on base. Not the Greyhound bus, but... and this kid he's probably, I don't know, early 20s. He's talking shit the whole time. He's like, I don't give a fuck about none of that shit. You better not get in my fucking face, all this stuff. He's doing it PC enough to not get in trouble right there at MEPS, but that's basically what he's saying. And so I'm like, okay, cool. This guy, he's confident, and, he's probably going to do well in basic training. Looks like a great athlete. PT should be no problem. He believes in himself. I'm sure he'll do fine. And so, because I just assume he's not going to say a fucking word to the drill instructor, right? So anyway, we get on the bus. We're heading towards Lackland Air Force Base, where I went to basic training. And they let us off the Greyhound, and then they put us on the real bus. And it's like an old school shitty bus, just like you see in the movies. We'll cut that out. It's just like you see in the movies, in Forrest Gump or whatever. And we're all on the bus, and the bus driver is a civilian, but he's an asshole. So this guy, I'm assuming he was a veteran, and he's seen all us little babies on the bus 1,000 times. He's like, shut the fuck up back there. Don't you say another fucking word. And I'm like, fuck it, I'm not saying shit anyway, but I'm not going to say anything now for sure. But this guy, the huge, confident black dude behind me, he's like, man, fuck you, cracker motherfucker. He's not saying it loud enough so the dude can hear him, but he's talking shit. I'm like, all right, man, I don't know. And so we get to the Air Force Base, and the one of the training instructors, they call them TIs in the Air Force. He comes up on the bus, get your fucking ass off the bus, get your bags, just screaming. The same shit you see in movies. It's stereotypical. It's the same fucking thing. So we all grab our shit, we get off, we're lining up, and this doesn't necessarily have to do with my story, but I want to say this because it was such a strange thing. So we're all standing in line, we're all standing out there for an hour, and they tell us not to fucking move, and most people are obeying, and especially the kid in front of me. And this is the middle of summer. It's fucking 90-something degrees outside. We don't have any water. Everybody's wearing jeans and T-shirts and shit. This kid in front of me is sweating his ass off. And I can tell he's really nervous. He looks like, just by looking at him, he looks like he's probably a good kid, like a decent person. But he looks scared. And so he starts to shake, and he fucking throws up right in front of me and goes all over the ground, and I can smell it. And I'm like, oh, fuck, don't puke. Oh, she's fucking gross, right? And this training instructor, T.I., runs up to him. He's like, you fucking pussy, you coward, are you scared? You want some water? You want your mama? Like all this shit. And I'm like, are you fucking serious? Is this legal in 2004? Jesus Christ. They didn't get him water or a towel. He's like, fucking stand there, stop moving. I was like, holy shit. Okay, this is legit as fuck, right? And so, anyway, we make it through all that processing. And the big, strong, confident black boxer guy that I met at MEPS, he ends up being in my flight. And your flight are the people who are with you the whole time through basic training. Mm-hmm. And so the first few days, nobody really gets singled out or targeted. I did eventually because of the tattoo on the back of my arm that had our last name on it. And that was a mistake to have that, but I didn't know that at the time. But anyway, this guy, the black dude, he started responding to them in a very strange way. And he was scared. It was obvious he was very scared. And they would ask us a question. And they would tell you, if you know the answer, raise your hand. And so he would raise his hand, and he would address them by the rank and title of another military branch, as if he was complimenting them. It makes no sense. He's like, yes, petty officer so and such. That's Navy. That's not Air Force. And I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with this guy? And so they're going off on him, going crazy on him. This isn't the fucking Navy. This is the fucking Air Force. And he just keeps doing shit like that. So we make it in like 2 weeks. And they give you another drug test after 2 weeks to see if you tried to cover anything up from the drug test you took at MEPS and all that shit. And we're all lined up outside in front of this building, and there's a bunch of doctors or nurses or whatever in there to take blood tests and piss tests and shit. And we're sitting there, and I can tell that guy's noticeably agitated, the black guy, the boxer guy, right? I'm like, what the fuck is going on with this guy? And so he's 3 or 4 people ahead of me, so I can see what's going on, because you're like cattle. You're just in a line, and then the medical staff, they send you through, and then they send you out. And so they're taking your blood first, I believe, before you have to piss, if I remember right. And so he's a few guys in front of me. They're taking his blood, and they're attempting to. And as soon as they pull out that needle, he fucking loses his shit. He's like, y'all motherfuckers are trying to get me AIDS. You're trying to get me AIDS. You're trying to kill me. And he starts crying and screaming. And not just like crying, but there's snot bubbles in his nose, like you would see in a child, and dripping down his face and all this shit. And so I don't know if this guy's mentally ill or what. I don't think he was. Based off the interactions with him that I had, I don't think that he was mentally ill. I think that what really happened is he was probably one of the better looking and toughest guys on his block or in his neighborhood or his school, and that he always had this artificial sense of superiority and leadership in his system. But once he was put into a position where no one gave a fuck, no one, that he lost all of that for the first time ever. And he just went fucking nuts, dude. And it shook me up. You know, I like to think of myself as a manly man, but it shook me up because I never seen a grown, strong man like that just break down and flip the fuck out. They had to call the cops in to restrain him. And it's not that he was being violent or trying to hurt anyone. It's that he was flailing and there was just bodily fluids everywhere. And so, anyway, they took him into this back room and they had some type of psychiatrist or counselor, I'm assuming based off of the dress code and the name tag, and a few cops, and they went into this back room to talk to him. And so I forgot about him temporarily, got my blood test and my piss test, and went back outside. But it was still in the back of my mind. I was kind of shook up. It's like, Jesus Christ, what the fuck did I get into? And so we go back outside, and we all line up. And I forget how many people were in my flight, like 30. So there's 15 of us on one side of the sidewalk, and 15 of us, or 14 now, on the other side. And we're all looking at each other, and we're all standing at attention, and our training instructor comes out there. And he addresses the issue because it was something that most of us saw or heard about to some degree as it was taking place. He's like, you want to be hardcore? Do you want to be fucking cowards? You want to be airmen? He's like saying all this shit, pumping us up, but at the same time instilling fear in us. Is if you can't handle something like this where you don't have control, there's no fucking way you're going to handle being in the military. And it kind of shook me up inside because I was thinking to myself, man, I never thought about it like that. Am I ready? I don't know. I just saw this guy have a fucking emotional breakdown. Like, what the fuck's going on here? And so we're standing there and this guy's giving his speech, and then, the doors opened behind my training instructor from the hospital or whatever you want to call it, the area where we were doing the test at, the P test and the blood test. And this guy walks out, and two security forces officers, they have him on each side. They have him in handcuffs, and they have an arm hooked around each one of his arms. And he's still crying and kind of dragging his feet, and there's, saliva and snot dripping off his face. And my TI didn't say a word. Everybody was dead silent. The cops were silent. And all you could hear was that guy like sniffling and crying and shit. And he's just being dragged right in front of us and then put in the back of the cop car. And we're all just, you're standing attention, so you can't move your head, but you're trying to follow with your eyes without getting caught, And so they put him in the back and they drive off, and there's a moment of silence again. Just like, holy fucking shit. And then my TI immediately starts up, you better not end up like that, motherfucker. Just going fucking nuts, man. And it was super intense. But anyway, the point of that whole long-ass story that I just told is that you can fake confidence so much that you can believe it. Because if it's reinforced by your peers or by everyone around you, even your foes, if they believe it enough so that you really fucking believe it, you can set yourself up for failure, man, in a big way, because you've lived in this world of bullshit for the last 22 years, and where you were always in control when everybody was scared of you. And then now this fucking bomb drops on you. It's something simple. When everybody else says, I got a blood test, I got a piss test, who gives a fuck, right? But that was a moment where he just lost total fucking control. He had no control over what could be done to him, and he went fucking nuts, man. And I think it's dangerous. It's very healthy to admit your fears in life. There may be occasions as men or women where it may not be the most ideal or opportune thing to do at the time, but in the end, you have to catch yourself when you're full of shit. You have to admit what you're doing wrong and what you're failing at, and to overcome those things. And maybe that incident for that guy, that was that moment for him that changed him forever. For all I know, he's a superstar millionaire now, or a CEO, because that event was so intense that it changed him.
Well, I think that kind of goes back to what we were talking about last episode, was allowing yourself to be vulnerable at times, because had you not built up all this bravado and all this, you don't have that problem, I don't think. You don't have, if you haven't built this huge statue of a person that doesn't really exist, that thing can't get knocked down. I guess if you're just honest with yourself, admit, hey, I'm a human, I got faults, and maybe I'm not the baddest ass on the block, that when you're proven not to be, that it doesn't come as a colossal shock to the system. So I think we're getting up, we're a little over an hour now, and I just want to say thanks to everybody who's given us comments in the past few weeks. We kind of got our Facebook page up and going, and we actually got a really long and really cool comment from someone named Top Secret on the blog, and it's a pretty cool story of just somebody else's life and kind of what they've gone through. And anyway, I just want to say I appreciate reading that. It's really cool, and I thanks for listening to our crazy stuff. And I think we'll go ahead and start to wrap this up. John, you want to give them the phone number for the voicemail?
I will. And again, I just want to reiterate how much we appreciate the comments. It was from Top Secret, correct?
Yeah, that was the name, I think. So.
Yeah, I read it before, and just to know that someone took the time, took an hour to listen to us talk and to consider things and then to give us their opinion on it. I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. I think it's amazing. So thank you very much for that. And we've gotten, as we've been going on, we're starting out, but we've gotten some support, and it's coming in a little more and more. And not to give us big heads, but we appreciate it because it's amazing. It's just fun.
Yeah, I hate to sound like almost a cliche artist here, but I mean, this is like a cathartic experience for me. This is like something about putting these headphones on and talking to the microphone. It's not rewarding, but it's very relaxing, and for some reason very easy. It's easy to get talking about stuff that may not otherwise come out. So it's cool, man. I appreciate it.
For sure, man. No doubt. Okay, so again, we're running out of time. We wish we weren't, but this is something, and I think we're getting close. I think there's somebody out there that wants to call us, and I'm going to check the messages after this one because I think that somebody's going to. And our number, if you want comments, concerns, you want to talk a little shit, you want to criticize this, look, man, we can take it. We may, as we discussed tonight, we may have initial reaction like, man, fuck you. But a couple seconds later, we'll be like, you know what? He's right. His voice needs to be heard. If he's got a good point, God damn it, we're going to fucking play it and respond the most responsible way possible. So with that said, call us at 804-557-4691. To simplify that, it's 804-JJ-SHOW-1. And we're available on iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play. The Facebook page is up, so check us out at The Jake and John Show or thejakeandjohnshow.com. And I think that's all I have.
Yeah, that's about it. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Peace out.